You are now listening to Femme Regard Podcast with Tessa Markle
and Carolina Alvarez.
Femme.
Hey, fam, it's Tessa and Carolina.
Hi.
Did you miss us?
Hello.
Like that whole, week that you haven't heard from us?
I know. Happy Friday, because that's when this is out.
Yes, happy Friday, guys. We've got another great guest for you, as always. This one was recommended to us by his publicist, Olivia. So thank you, Olivia, for sending him our way. But today...
Merci beaucoup.
Yes. Today we are talking to Mikail Chowdhury, who he's an Emmy-nominated producer, award-winning filmmaker, and playwright, whose work has been selected for multiple film festivals, including the Oscar-qualifying Slamdance, Outfest LA, Real Sisters of the Diaspora in New Orleans, and also screened at the British Film Institute. So I just wanted to kind of read off those accolades because he's done some really cool shit. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about kind of how he got started and how he got to where he is today, but specifically about the series that he's been working on, which one of the episodes he turned into a short film, which is Aimee Victoria. And it deals with two queer, deaf women of color, which is we love telling women's stories. We love sharing diverse voices. So this is right up our alley. We watched the trailer. We were like, we love that it's just a love story, and it's like these women happen to be deaf. They happen to be of color. They happen to be queer. It's not about that.
Yes.
And, a lot of times I feel like that's kind of, you get those characters and they're literally only in the story to have that representation. You know what I mean? And their storyline is about them being whatever they are. And that's not people, there's all kinds of people in this world. We're all just here being humans. So to actually,
well said, Tessa.
to just tell a story about love or whatever the storyline is, and just, having people of whatever color, deaf, queer, whatever, I love that. I love the way that he did that. But even more impressive is that he did this during lockdown. So everybody was remote, he was directing remotely. They were literally passing around a phone for everybody to film on, and just how they did it was amazing. And we've talked to a few filmmakers on this show who have filmed in quarantine and did the remote thing, but this was a method I haven't heard of. So I found it pretty cool, pretty inspiring.
Very inspiring. I think the biggest takeaway is if there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
And that applies through all of our filmmaking, ventures. But I think especially with him incorporating the deaf community in his production and in front of and behind the camera, he goes into all that. I think that's just so beautiful. Yeah. And he just makes it sound like it's no big deal. And that's how it should be. So guys, if there's a will, there's a way. Enjoy this episode. Yeah, tell us where are you from and where in the line of production you fall.
Absolutely. So, originally I'm from Bangladesh. I'm mixed race, so I'm Bangladeshi Mexican, and British is my background.
Whoa!
I know it's cool, and I can take no credit for it whatsoever because I was
That's
just born
like
with
me,
it.
honestly. Yeah. I'm half Polish, half Colombian. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Oh, very cool.
Yeah, exactly. All over it, but can't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, people are like, oh my god, that's so amazing, and I'm like, oh, thank you.
Now, if I had a Scottish accent in the mix of all of that, that would throw everyone off. See, you have that extra element where people are like, yeah, he's British, no duh. And it's like, no, surprise. There's more layers to this onion, let me tell you, honey.
Well, also the thing about having a British accent is that not only does it convey a level of intellect that is far greater than my actual level of intellect, but it also thanks to film and TV, everyone assumes anyone that doesn't have an American accent, whatever country they're from or whatever period of history you're from, just have a very fancy British accent. So I just kind of blend into anything that's going, I think.
Perfect.
It's a great charade you get to play. And I just can only do that in my acting. So. Exactly. Well, that's really awesome. So where did you grow up then?
Mainly in London. So I moved to the UK when I was pretty young, grew up mainly in London. And then I was in Washington, D.C. for about 6 years. I've been lucky enough to live in a few places. So I got to live in Australia for a little bit and then a bit of time in Paris. But yeah, I was in DC for a while. And now I'm sort of back and forth between the States and LA and DC.
Very nice.
Wonderful. And now we have to know, did you go to film school?
I did not. No.
You did not.
I did not go to film school.
How do we get these people? Literally, like no one goes to film school. It's amazing.
And we love it. Because we didn't either. And we just because we learned everything, on the job. Like we just decided we're going to start producing. We're going to start making our own content and just jumped into it. And so we love other people that are like, yep, nope, didn't go to film school, just did it.
Yeah, and I think that's I take nothing away from film school or drama school or writing or whatever education people want to take on it. I never tell people you shouldn't do it. But I went and I did. I mean, I had coming from a kind of as a second generation immigrant, South Asian and everything. I was very much taught the same sort of conversation, the sort of thing you probably heard Carolina as well, which is that, and it takes a different form for different people. For me, my dad said to me, there are people who don't want you to be here, people who won't want you to be in their company. So you need to get something that they can't take away from you. And if you can get a qualification, a professional degree of some description, then that is something you will always have. So I ended up becoming an attorney. So that's why I studied. That's not the only reason I studied law, but I think it was a driver. So I studied law. But then while I was upset, I started playing music when I was a kid. And while I was always obsessed with film and TV, completely obsessed with it. And at university, I started falling in with the theater crowd, started off improv, then acting, then directing, then writing. And then after I did my first play.
Theater kids got him.
Theater kids, a bunch of crazy misfits wherever you are who just sort of let you come and join and hang out. And you guys had to make stuff without going to film school. And if you went to film school, you're going to have a prearranged group of people who are trying to do the same thing, who are in the creative field. And if you don't have that, then you have to find those people or get drawn to them. And then you can actually kind of allow yourself to be who you are. There's no individuality in making a film. It's a team. It's a huge team effort and collaboration to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, sorry, I cut you off. So you're hanging out in theater. So you grew up with music, theater, like as something you've always been drawn to, it sounds like, and something that's kind of like kept creeping on you. So
I always loved that. My brain just kind of always like wired to sort of memorizing music and stuff like that and things. And then I was at university. So we had the first play I ever did, got selected by the theatre company to go and take it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is a huge arts festival in Edinburgh every year. And it went down very well and had some good accolades. So I decided to turn it into a feature film. But of course this is where it comes to no film school. I had no idea what I was doing, and there was no one around me. There was no film school in Dundee in Scotland where I went to university. And so I didn't have anyone else to tell me. And I went to Scotland. So your Scottish accent would be perfect. But when you haven't got anyone telling you what you can't do or telling you how you should do something, then you just kind of get on with it and you just make it work. And I'm not saying it was a particularly good film, but it got made and it got finished. And I think if I'd had too many people but you need this first, or you need this first, and need this, then it never would have got past it. I think. I don't know about you guys when you made your first productions, how you
went through the same thing. Yeah, because our first production was a Western, and we ended up only shooting one scene because it was essentially going to be our proof of concept. Like we have the whole script written and came to realize how much it would cost to actually produce the whole feature. But, we didn't know anything, and we were just just going into it blind and learning as we're doing it. But I think that's why it got finished, at least the one scene, because, we didn't know how much we were going to spend on it. We didn't know what to prepare for. We didn't, we just jumped right in and kind of said, fuck it,
Yeah, I think
said, fuck it, we're doing this. And honestly, if we knew what we knew back then today, we probably wouldn't have even attempted that for better or for worse reasons. But I'm glad we fucking did.
You could have. I mean, the threshold for screw it, let's do it varies from person to person, and I think the lower it is, the better to just get stuff rolling. There's too many. There are too many people that will tell you you have to do things a certain way.
There's a lot of just talking to other industry professionals on the show. There's just a lot of gatekeepers in general in every level. So if you're going to be your own gatekeeper, you're never going to make anything. It's just at some point you are prepared enough. You have your vision. You have to just trust that process and in doing it and doing a short film, which is what we always try to tell people, do something smaller. I mean, maybe not a Western with stuntmen and horses.
I was going to say, when you were like, my first film was a Western, I was like, well, okay, so you went for a really easy, low concept.
Right.
That's what we thought. We thought we were doing it right. We were like, we're in California. It's like, there's a ton of free desert plains, right? Because we were really passionate about doing a period piece, like us theater nerds. We're like, we want to get into character. And sure enough, I'm such a dork. And sure enough, we were like we thought that would be the most inexpensive way to shoot. And like now looking back on it, maybe if we did like a scene that didn't involve like stuntmen.
Well, that was the other thing too.
Like
out of our entire script, we picked the most complicated scene, but that was like, we wanted to show off like what we could do for the whole feature. So that part did make sense, but yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot. And I think that's the thing. We were like, we're so new in this game. We want to show people that we know how to shoot and film and handle something as crazy as this.
Yeah.
And I think now looking back on it, I mean, it is like kind of awesome to say we did do it. Like we were able to handle that day. It was like the hardest thing we've ever done. But now we're like, okay, everything else almost does seem like a breeze, to be honest. Like I'm like, oh yeah, like of course everything is not a breeze, but just like indoor location, no animals. I think we're gonna nail it, Tessa. I think we can handle it.
And you guys also will have an understanding of all the different roles and steps on the set that you may not have had otherwise, because you would have had to presumably be, even if you weren't doing them all, you would have had to be very heavily involved in bringing them on, managing, overseeing. So you're going to have a much clearer idea of, there are basic things that, so, and again, I'm not dismissing film school at all. I would love to have gone. It's a fantastic thing. But there are things, I've met directors that never even think about the music for a film until literally at the end. And then it's like an afterthought for doing it. Or they don't talk to a post-production consultant or an editor before you start shooting. So they've got no idea what you're going to have. And I'm not saying that I get it right every time. I don't. But one thing you realize after you've had to do it once, kind of the hard way, and people haven't just been there to do it around you, just doing their things, is you kind of understand how critical all the pieces are and how important they are in the function.
Every single department is so important. And like we're in development for our first feature film.
Congratulations.
Thank
you. And we have like an amazing team already put together that we've talked to already in depth about costumes, an idea of like how production design is going to go, music. Yeah. Like I write, and maybe it's helpful because I wrote the script that like I'm writing already to the music as I'm writing. Like I already have a Spotify playlist, sync, check it out, everyone, I'm public. And yeah, it's like gives me that momentum, that flow, and what I envision too in the editing, which is something we want to like seek for after we probably have landed funding, to find like our special effects editor to have a consultation before shooting, because it's so important to have these conversations, because they'll help you guide your vision in ways you might not even know, because that's their specialty. Like that's their department. And I think it's always great to like come on to these conversations as you are the expert. I want to hear from you and really value that,
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. I always say to people, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I've made many mistakes. I think in life generally, I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing. But and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to keep making a lot of mistakes. But so when I go to people, I'm just like, well, this is what I'm thinking. Am I completely wrong? And then they say, and also there's a thing you guys probably learned as well, which is it sounds super basic, not like basic, but it sounds basic as a principle, because any act of storytelling, whatever it is about choices. So whether you're writing the script or even developing the idea and concept behind it, you can tell a character, it's this godlike thing. You're like, I am in charge of everything here. And you can move people wherever you want. You can shift the story, you can do that. And then when you're shooting, you can be, well, actually, I want this angle, I want different angle, I want that. And when you're editing, you can cut it. There's not necessarily a right or wrong choice, but you have to be willing to make those choices. And people will tell you, I think this is the way to do it. I think you shouldn't do this. And sometimes you're going to be, you're right. I do. I'm speaking from the position of, say, a producer director, but you'll be like, you'll be like, well, yeah, sometimes you're right. And sometimes you have to be, okay, I get it. I respect it. But no, we're going to go with it. But I heard what you said, but I want to understand it's on my shoulders if I've got it wrong.
I mean, that's the thing about just this industry is like there's so many opinions and there's no right answer for anything, right? So like, I mean, we were both actors first, and I know in my acting career, like it's been so much of just like this advice from this person that I fully trust, and then I get completely opposite advice from this person that I also fully trust, and it's like, well, what's right? There is no right. You just literally have to take everything with a grain of salt and decide what's right for you.
I think you're right. As long as it's your choice that you finally make at the end of it. But you're completely correct. There are opinions, and I give opinions all the time to stuff, so I know better than anybody else. But I always try to caveat it with that. I try to make sure that people discount my accent when I give an opinion. So then I want you to know, don't take this with more gravitas. Just
I'm dead. Yeah, I'm
it's
dead.
a sounding posh voice. But you're completely right about all of that. You got to make those choices. You got to make sure they're informed on it. Just the right people, isn't it? I mean, you found this. You can go and make anything with anything as long as you have people who are going to deliver and committed and willing to work passionately.
Yes, I love that. That is such that's what matters the most. It's not what have you done, what experience do you have, what knowledge do you have. Of course, all of that helps for sure. But like, if you have got the passion and the dedication, that's what's going to matter the most, because you can learn anything. I mean, you can learn how to do pretty much anything on YouTube nowadays, So yes, experience helps, but like the passion and the drive is really the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what having a team, everyone in the team who has that same passion and dedication just is going to make everything, all the issues, just like problem solve faster, easier, like, because there's always going to be shit that hits the fan, like that's production. But I always try to have this like mindset that everything's going to work out, it's going to be okay. I was on set yesterday and that was my mindset for the day. Like, we're going to figure it out. I don't know what's at the bottom of this hill, but we're going to go for it. This is where we're landing. Yeah. We're going to figure it out. Yeah.
Well said.
So do you wear the producer director hat mainly?
So it varies. I started off like you guys, doing a bit of acting. I didn't do a ton of it, but I did a bit of it in theatre, and I still do every now and again. I dabble. But my main thing was starting off as sort of writer-director. And that's what I developed, not necessarily for the same projects. I also write separately and I direct separately, but I ended up becoming a sort of reluctant producer on the basis that I was getting my first film that I made, the feature that I did, which we shot it for I guess in US dollars is about $800, something like that, $800. It was back in the day.
A feature film.
Yeah,
for $800.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did the opposite of what you guys did. So I didn't go and be as ambitious as you were.
Ambitious is the right word. You were ambitious.
Highly ambitious. So I kind of took the play that I wrote for Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival. I kind of wrote it knowing that I was submitting it to the team to see that. And I knew what we had. I knew we're going to have a small stage. But a whole bunch of people are going to be there. So I kind of wrote this ensemble thing, takes place in one room in a living room, and it takes place over one night. So you can have lots of characters interacting and make it free-flowing, interesting. So when we did the film, we shot it all in my friend's apartment. I used the money which I managed to blag from the local council to get like it was pretty decent at the time, digital camera and a microphone. None of us had a clue what we were doing, so we didn't even use the sound mixing because we couldn't make it work. So we just had people holding a boom if they weren't acting, and then we did stupid stuff like somebody had heard that if you put parchment paper over the top of a lamp, it will diffuse the light. So you just had like students standing there holding lamps with parchment paper on, angling them, and me being like, oh yes, that's perfect, that's exactly right, even though I didn't know whether it was right or not. So we just shot it like that, and I had to like edit it by sneaking into the animation college to their basement to go and edit and stuff in the mornings. So we did all of that. So I mean, again, everything was just no money, no cash for any of it, but got it made, got it finished, had a screening, it got into a festival in the States. And then when I was over in America, I kind of ended up, I had a couple of scripts optioned that I'd written, and they didn't go anywhere. They kind of got stuck in production hell. as often happens,
Yeah.
because what that was a good learning experience, because what I learned is actually most films never ever get made, even when someone likes the script or has something.
Yeah.
The vast majority never go anywhere. And over the years, when I was back and forth, still doing my law career, and I was doing theatre and things, I just kind of realized that if you can keep doing stuff for other people, and that's perfectly valid, and there's nothing wrong with that as a career. But if you're someone like me, and I think someone like you guys, who actually want to or enjoy, would be the better way, enjoy doing different aspects of it, then you're better off actually making your own stuff at the same time as doing stuff for other people. So that's what I do. So that's how I started then producing, developing, and doing it. So I tend to approach things from that, but I take on different roles. So I'm attached at the moment to a feature film to direct it. I've just been hired to write the script purely as a writer for it's the life story. It's incredible. I can't tell you about, unfortunately, but it's an amazing life story of this individual who I met the other day, and the producer already had the life rights and for his memoirs and stuff, so kind of do that. So I get to do that stuff, but obviously, if you want to make your own thing, truly your own thing, you've got to just kind of do it yourself and accept. It's going to be bumpy. It may not be everything you want it to be, but it will be your own.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing too, is like the more people you hire, and obviously, certain projects require a certain amount of crew and whatever, but like the more people that you hire, the more things that you delegate out, it's like the less creative control you really have, because yes, you're the one that's finalizing all the decisions, but like, and it's nice to kind of let go of that control a little bit too, to let the people do their job, so that is nice in a way, but also, I feel like we're all kind of control freaks when we have an idea that we want to, produce. And so, yeah, it's just the more you're doing on your own, the more control you have, the more say you have as well. So
absolutely. And then the bigger your budget, the less control you have, because understandably, the more money that comes in, the more that quite correctly and quite reasonably, the more people want to have a say and an involvement, because they want to be convinced and certain of the product you're going to make at the end of it. So I mean, that doesn't mean you shoot everything for a few $1,000s, or you never do a bigger film, or you only do a bigger film, or you only bring in small crews. It's just different ways of shooting different things. But I think, as you say, to make your own thing, as you guys did brilliantly, and I would love to watch it, because tremendous respect for doing a Western. That's immensely impressive.
You're gonna laugh.
I'm sure
it's one scene. It's like 2.5 minutes, but we'll send it to you, because we're still like, we are proud of it. I mean, it was the very first thing we did. Like, we had fun with it.
And there's a thing that filmmaking. I mean, I've done I've sort of produced or helped produce a couple of shorts with people where it's their first film, and I never claimed to be the most experienced filmmaker out there, but the thing I say to them is, you have to, the biggest mistake I think people make is you get so caught up in your own work, and you're like, well, this has to be my vision, and it has to be this thing, and doing that. And there are two things to that. One, you lose sight of the audience. There's an audience that doesn't care that it took you 2 days to shoot that scene, or that you managed to pull in all these favors to do it. If the shot doesn't work when you cut it together, it's not entertaining for someone that knows nothing about the background or the backstory of the film, then you're failing as a filmmaker to get to them. It's not for you, it's for other people. And then the other thing is that you've got like if you're so close to it, you treat it as if they treat it as and I mean, it's not a criticism of people, but it's an easy thing to fall into. You treat it as if it's the only thing you'll ever make. It's not. It's the first thing you're going to make, or the second thing, or the third thing. You're gonna get to make many more films. So the stuff you have to compromise on here, the things you don't feel you get right, or the things you get wrong, or the things you can't do on it, it's fine, because you'll get another chance to do it later.
Very true.
That is a really nice thing, I think, for our audience to like be reminded of, that it's like, and we have talked about on the shows, just to kind of take off that weight of like being so precious and like rolling with it, because at the end of the day, it's more important to get things done in a way that is still like you're still getting your story. Like it can be unfortunate if you didn't get that one like camera movement shot, but if you get the shot, then like, let's be happy and let's finish it and like move on, and not, it's okay if this one suitcase wasn't, this color. It's like, it's not the end of the world. We're going to be okay. Like, it's like, I think it's easy, and it's great when directors are really passionate about, what they really envision and want, and the specificity and attention to detail. That's what makes a great director. Absolutely. But I think to get caught up and be so nitpicky when you're delaying production or adding more costs as a producer as well, that bothers me. I'm like, we can't have that, because then you're just making it an issue when we need this to be a non-issue. Is that too harsh? Am I coming? Okay, sorry, I'm on my little stand, like my little podium, my soapbox, as we like to call. But that's just where I feel like we need to then have some room to again find creative solutions, right, and like make this work. And that's what I'm about. And that's okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Femme Regard podcast.
I don't think they're end of the sermon. So, no, I don't think it's too harsh at all. I don't really think, Tessa, but I think that's absolutely. I think that's really well said.
Yeah.
You have to. We were doing so the series that I did in 2020, the short form series, which was called The Myth of Control, and we made it in the middle of lockdown, and it was after everything kind of went, when we were just, as I was sat there, spent a week forlornly going like, but the film that I had funding for is now not going to happen because of that. Then we started making it, and I remember my producing partner on it, Sana, who's absolutely wonderful, and she's in distribution, she's an executive, and she's very creative as well. And she was moving between London and the US, so she was out of a job at the time. So I said, well, you're not busy right now, so come on, let's do this. And we just made it. But when we did that, there were times when she would quite correctly be like, but I don't know how this is going to be, or I don't know if we can get that done. And I said to her the same thing I always say to everyone, which everyone's sick of me saying, is that most films never get made. Most films will never get finished. So the odds of you making a film and it being shit, pardon my language, are far lower than the odds of you never getting it made at all. If you make it and you finish it and you put your time and passion and energy into it, it's probably going to be good. In fact, it's probably going to be very good. So I think just, as long as you can kind of be like, well, I really want this thing, try for it. If it doesn't work out, that's fine. You let it go, move on, and get onto it. Because then at the end, as long as you've got, as you said, Tessa, as long as you've got all the footage, as long as you've got the shots, you can make it work.
Yeah. I love that. And it's like, I've seen it, with our first couple of shorts and stuff too. It's like you make it and then you're like, oh man, that was shit. And then you go back and you watch it and you're like, actually, that was pretty good. Like
the amount of times that Tessa and I are like this, oh my God. And then we cut it together, we're like, we did it. That's actually pretty cool.
Tessa, I'm seriously digging Jambox. The fam needs to hear about their extensive music and sound effect library.
I agree. Not only do they have a huge library created by Hollywood-level composers, but you can search through it all based on criteria like genre and mood.
Plus, they even have detailed stems you can use to create your own soundtracks from the elements they provide. You can literally be your own composer.
6,000 unique tracks and tens of thousands of stems, plus over 10,000 sound effects. Carolina, that's amazing.
Oh, it gets better. They even gave us a discount code for our listeners. 10% off with Femme10. Connecting filmmakers with ridiculously good music and sound effects. Go and visit jambox.io and start leveling up your sound production.
Exactly. Again, that's code FEMME, F-E-M-M-E 10 at jambox.io.
You got to give yourself a break sometimes. Like you said, if you're passionate about it, you have a passionate team, that's going to come through. And again, people can be understanding too if it's your first couple of little shorts,
people, remember audiences, audiences are used to seeing everything from super highly polished productions through to productions that cost millions but are designed to look like they're super low budget. You have some very successful films like Tangerine that were shot on iPhones. People are used to seeing that kind of thing to it. So as long as you make it look like it was deliberate, nobody knows that you couldn't afford I don't know, you couldn't afford a steady cam operator and everything for 3 days, or that you had to improvise by sliding the camera along a roller, for a roller skate, or skateboard, or whatever it is, whatever random.
We literally, I think we were shooting on skateboards and stuff too. I remember for that. It was all of that. You guys should check out Natural Selection on your YouTube channel if you want to see it. Okay, done with the plug. But for sure. So actually, let's get into, I want to hear more about your short film.
Aimee Victoria, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So Aimee Victoria, it was a short film. You shot it in the pandemic. And why don't you tell everyone kind of the log line? And we are going to definitely ask you some details on how you shot this, because it's also interesting.
Sure. So that's right. So Aimee Victoria is a deaf queer love story. It's set at a time when there is a couple, Aimee and Victoria, who have been in a relationship for a year. They're coming to their first anniversary and they're unable to be together during that time. And it's just about those two having to face some of their vulnerabilities and being honest and open with each other. And it just has I think it's a nice, sweet little sort of romantic story.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw the trailer and we felt that. It was really sweet. Yeah. So what inspired you to want to make a deaf queer love story?
Yeah, absolutely. So it didn't emerge as that. There wasn't any goal to do that.
Okay.
So during this, so we're going back in time. If we go back to our repressed memories of 2020, which started off so very, very well, and we had a lockdown happen in March 2020, end of March 2020. And everyone, obviously in this industry, everyone was out of work. Nobody could shoot anything, nobody could do anything. And plus we're all locked at home, and we're having to bleach our groceries as we bring them in from the supermarket with our latex gloves on and all of that. So I decided that we would just make something, and I didn't know what that thing was going to be. But I also naively thought that, as we all did, that this lockdown would be over after maybe 3-4 months. Mm-hmm. We were all like, this thing's going to be a passing thing and it's going to suck, but then we'll be over it. And so I emailed a few friends. I think the email was actually titled Bonkers Idea. And I just said, I want to shoot something and I want to do it remotely. What do you think? Mm-hmm. And this is my rough idea. My rough idea was, we do something where there's a group of several friends and it follows them across one day in their life, and there will be a mystery element to it, and we get to see a few features through it. And that was my concept. So I said that way they don't have to be all together in the same room at any time. You don't have to keep explaining that and all this. And everyone, to my surprise, came back and said, that's brilliant. I've got nothing going on. Yes. Yeah. And so we did it. And so it developed into this TV series called The Myth of Control. It's a short form series. We actually went from 7 episodes, each one about 10 minutes long. We went from concept to locked scripts in about 3 weeks for all the episodes, which is insanely fast. I show ran it along with Sana Soni, who I mentioned before. And then we had different sort of writers or co-writers for each of the episodes. We had different directors. So I directed one of the episodes. We had 6 other directors who came in and did different episodes. Nice. We found a brilliant cast, fantastic thing. And we had a great creative team behind it. And after a lot of technical back and forth and talking to different people, then we worked out the best way to shoot it, because we were going to have to put a camera in the hands of people that had never held a camera before, because they all had to be in the quarantine bubble of each actor, who were going to then shoot themselves in their own home while we directed them over Zoom or Google Meet and video conferencing. And because we didn't want to shoot it on Zoom, and nothing wrong with shooting a film on Zoom, people have done it very well, but we wanted to make it look like it was shot in a traditional way. So we didn't want people to watch it and go, oh, this was shot on an iPhone remotely. Right. We wanted it to be, oh, this just looks like a normal movie. And then that's a cool thing. Because I take the line that if you have a novelty element to it, that novelty element lasts for about 5 seconds. And then if the film isn't good, people will just be, okay, it's fine. But if you just make a really good film, they won't care how you did it. So that's how we did it. And so we ended up taking my wife's iPhone, because my wife is wonderful, and she let us clear the iPhone and upload this app called Filmic Pro onto it. We sent it with
what's the app called?
Oh, Filmic Pro, Filmic. Okay. So Filmic Pro, I believe that's what they use for Tangerine, and I think that's what Steven Soderbergh has used for his films he's done on the iPhone. And they're a great bunch. I think they're based out of Seattle, small sort of startup bunch. really helpful guys. We reached out to them while we were doing it. They were super supportive. Whenever we had questions about, I'm not sure why this is going, or can it do this or do that, they were wicked. And what it does effectively unlocks the camera work on your phone so that you can deactivate all the auto stuff that your phone is doing to the
That's
camera,
smart.
Yeah.
and allows you to then play with it. Because so as you guys know, smartphone cameras are amazing, because when you shoot a film, anyone that hasn't shot a film assumes that you just point a camera and you press it, and they don't know that you have to do so many different things about lenses, about different shots. If you're
Right.
doing a fast one, a slow shot, if you're doing highlight, low, whatever, there's so many changes. And your phone just processes all of that with software to make it look good however you're shooting.
Yeah.
So Filmic Pro allows you to just switch all of that off, and then you can go sort of full on with it. Yes, we sent it out to each person in turn. It was sanitized in the box. They put it in the back of a trunk of a lift, and then drove to the next actor. The driver would pop the trunk without even opening the door, so the actor didn't have to interact with any person physically. They take it out, sanitize the equipment again for safety, shoot it, redo it, pack it, and pass it on. So that's how we kind of did this thing. And we had a screen mirroring system set up. Yeah, we had to reverse engineer everything about it and work out how to make all these pieces of technology that weren't designed to work together and make them fit in a way that was accessible to people.
Yeah.
So we did, and we had, I mean, I'm not going to lie, depending on people's Wi-Fi connection, there were easier shoots and there were harder shoots, but we all got through it, and all of the actors involved were brilliant. And we had some fantastic actors, some wonderful cast. They were people like Murad Yunus, who's just at the Warner Access right now, with John Palladino from Orange is the New Black, with Christy Farris, who's been on Scrubs, Goliath, New Monogamy, so many shows. So we got a really fantastic cast in, who were all just prepared to basically shoot themselves at home for like a couple of days each time they did episodes. And so that's how we did it. And so the series was shot in that way. Post-production, everything was done completely remotely. Nobody met at all in person. I still haven't met, I would say, at least half of the people that we actually worked with in person. We still haven't interacted in person, and we ended up with people from, I think, 28 cities and 8 countries were working on it. So yeah, we got all that done, shot it super fast, did it really quickly, and then as we were looking to promote it, we decided we would take one episode and turn it into a standalone short film, because that is better on the festival circuit as a promotional system.
For sure.
So Aimee Victoria came out of that. And so I've explained a very long-winded explanation of this series, which didn't even answer your question of how did you come up with Aimee Victoria. But
no, but I love this backstory, because like just hearing how you even got started with it and what you decided to do. Like, I mean, you know, a lot of people have made films in quarantine and everybody had a different method to it. But like this, I haven't heard this method of literally like sending the phone off and like passing it off the whole, you know, like that's, I love it.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
It was
very unique.
it was, yeah. No, I think you're right. I haven't come across this one done elsewhere. We then use the same method. So there's a writer producer called Samir Gardezi. Samir, who he just did Hot Mess Holiday, which was on Comedy Central and got nominated for an NAACP Image Award for it. He's wonderful. He's out in LA, and he saw the cut of what we were doing, and he liked it. So he actually brought me and some of the team members on. So I ended up producing 3 short films for his company, which he needed produced before the election in 2020. And so we had to do a similar method. So we got to use this a few different times. And subsequent to that, we haven't had to shoot things fully remotely, but I've shot, I've done another film after that in February 2021, which, and that one, we used a lot of the technology concepts and a lot of the ideas around it to make that work. So I've been lucky that even now that we're not having to do it like that, you can still use those learning experiences, which it's one of those lessons you talked about earlier. Like you said, if you just go and have a go at it. So, but to the point of why is it a queer deaf love story between 2 women of color? So all the work that I do, I always try to bring diversity and equality into it, because I growing up, I didn't see myself on screen. I still don't see myself on screen. I'm a mixed race Muslim. You don't really see those characters unless they're in there for a very specific reason.
Right.
So I like to see things where the characters don't have to be women or LGBTQIA or a particular color. For the story,
Right.
but they are. And when you do it authentically, I think then the characters behave slightly differently. The stories can take on a slightly different turn. It's not about tokenistically just, well, let me swap this person, something like
I
that.
love that.
They're going to have that. Everyone, the microaggressions a character has faced during a time and the concerns they're going to have, they're all going to react slightly differently in different scenes.
Right.
So, so that's my starting take. And when we were doing the series and I was creating the 6 main characters for the series, Aimee was one of them. And I realized I couldn't remember watching Def. I can remember seeing a couple of things. Like I've seen Marley Matlin in West Wing, and there's a deaf character that showed up periodically in The Magicians. And you see little bits, but I realized I'd never really seen anything where actually more than one deaf character was just interacting with the other. I just couldn't occur it. So I thought it'd be interesting to do that. And I wanted to see that. So that's how Aimee emerged. Aimee, as to why Aimee was gay, honestly, there was no reason. We were creating it really, really fast. And as I was just conceiving the plot, it just made sense.
Yeah.
And it made sense that she would be. And it made sense that Victoria ended up being Victoria. And that's really how it, I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. There wasn't it sounds very pretentious. She just was. She was birthed that way. But
no, I love that it wasn't, again, like a token reason, other than you felt that it made sense. Here's a great character that would fit and feel that way, but there's no other agenda or specific reason other than like, would love to have more of this and like would love to see this. And I think that just makes the characters and the writing just more authentic, because it's just focusing on love, like other than like having to be specifically queer love, because queer love is love. Like there's just, I think I just, you can feel it when it's like forced in a script, or when you see it on TV, like, people are trying to be inclusive and it's just like, it's coming off like forced. And just, I love actually that your approach was very simple and, just not trying to like do more than what it is. Like, let it breathe, let it be its thing.
Thank you. And then we had the brilliant writer, Hannah Arneson. Hannah is, she writes queer stories. Well, it's not only, but that's one of her sort of key things.
But that's amazing
to do. And so it was great.
Yeah.
And she also knows the deaf community. So we were able to bring that in. And then, of course, we ran the script past the deaf actors as well to make sure that they were comfortable, that it was accurately showed the way they would interact with each other, the way they would interact with hearing characters. We wanted to make sure it matched up and they were happy with all of that. So we did that. It didn't, the truth, it's this thing that it doesn't take as much as people think to try to, number one, convince an audience that something is just a story. Because if you just do it, they're just going to buy into it. They're not going to, no one sat there. I've yet to hear anyone from any background say to me, but I watched it, but I just couldn't really get over the fact they were deaf. And like, they were just like, oh, they were deaf.
Yeah.
Fine. They were doing, there's like a novelty element to it again, it goes back that novelty factor. There's a novelty element, perhaps the first 30 seconds of the interaction. But after that, if the story is good and the characters are good, people will just accept that is the universe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You, like, honestly, again, watching the trailer, I got PTSD from the pandemic. and that's like, but that's something we all went through and can connect with. So again, it wasn't about now these queer deaf characters. It was like, this sense of, we've all had a moment where, sorry, can't see this loved one because someone's sick and you would jeopardize my health. But I miss you so much. Just like a friend of mine, like, I miss you. We're going to have to now find another way to connect. And it's already been like a year and a half. I haven't had like things like that. We've all had that we've all been through that. So I think, again, like, just committing to that human element, like you said, it's just like, we get it. It's not also then this grander story than what we've all can relate to and feel. I want to ask you, how do you sign? How can, as a director, how can you prepare yourselves if you want to hire deaf or write for having deaf characters and want to work with them? Like, how does that relationship work? I'm very curious.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I didn't direct that episode. Christy Farris, actually the actor, she directed that. So she starred in one episode of the series. And then Christy, I'm very lucky to call her a friend. She's one of the loveliest people out there. She's really wonderful. And I knew she'd been interested in directing. So I actually reached out to her and said, I said, mate, I'm doing this thing again. It's bonkers. It's insane. I won't be offended if you don't want to do it, but you fancy doing it.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, sure, without having any idea what on earth she was letting herself in for. And so that was her directorial debut. And Christy, and she was a brilliant choice because we have two women of color in the actors. You have Stephanie Nogueras and you have Natasha Ofali. Stephanie is Puerto Rican and Natasha is black. And Christy is a black woman who has been through many of the same sort of things that they would have had to face in their lives and in a different degree. So she was able to bring out so much more from their performance, which again goes to why should you have, it doesn't mean you can't, anyone can direct anything, anyone can write anything, all of that. But if somebody has had some degree of shared culture or experience, then that helps. It doesn't have to be exact, in my opinion, just my opinion, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but if they have something in there, then they can draw on that, and that can help. So that definitely came through. So none of us signed. None of us knew any ASL except for Hannah, the writer. She did. And Hannah actually appears in the film in a little cameo. There's a thing called video relay service, which is a way that deaf and hearing people communicate. So me as a hearing person, I could call this service and they will video call onto a deaf person and I will speak and hear their voice and they will sign onto the deaf person and vice versa. So we showed that in the start of the script, in the start of the film happening. And I convinced Hannah that she should be the interpreter, for the VRS service. So we got to shoot her doing her showing off her ASL skills, and she did a brilliant job.
Man, that's awesome.
But so none of us except for her knew it. We did, and we couldn't afford an interpreter the whole time because
that's what I was curious. Like, did you have to hire one?
It would have been brilliant to have had that, but we didn't have the money for it. So we used an interpreter for a couple of meetings and rehearsal. What we did at the time, Google Meet had just brought out, luckily for us, real-time closed captioning, voice recognition.
Wow.
So when you use Google
this is
Meet,
when I love tech. It's just that's amazing. Yeah.
It was an amazing thing. So we would speak and the captions would all come up and the actors would watch it and they'd see that, and they would, if they felt comfortable to use their voice with us, they would use their voice. And if they didn't, then they would type back in the caption or they would make an indication of what we're doing. Christy created a couple of basic signs that she could use for rolling, for cut, for action, stuff like that, so that she could communicate. And we learned, I learned a bit of sign language, a bit of ASL. I'm still learning. I'm not terribly good. I'm still very much two left hands, as they would say, but but getting better at it. So we did that so it was a mix of things going through. And this is where you talk about the people. It took so much patience from everybody. Everyone had to be so calm and doing it. But taking that to your question, actually working on a wider scale, on a less, I suppose, a more traditional set, the multi, which we shot in 2021, which was written and created by Natasha Ofali herself, and she starred in it as well.
Oh, wow.
So for that one, then we had sort of semi-remote production because it was in between lockdowns in LA in 2021. And for that, we had the interpreters remotely. We had a hearing DP and gaffer, but we had a majority deaf crew and a majority deaf cast. So we communicated with them by having a couple of big screens on the set, which the Zoom was on, and the ASL interpreters were there doing everything remotely. So we kind of had a combination again of having to, when it was particularly complex, everyone had to do it to the camera, so then you could see and hear back. And again, it required patience on set, required management. In the ideal world, we would have interpreters there the whole time to do that. And you can certainly do that in a bigger production. But look, the truth is, it doesn't take that much. If you're willing to make some accommodation and allowance for it, and also if they're willing to make some accommodation allowance for you, because it'd be perfectly reasonable for deaf cast and crew to say, it's not just about me trying to make myself heard to you. You have to find a way to communicate with me. But if everybody's just prepared to understand that we're making something the best way everyone can, and we're doing that, then you'll get it done.
Yeah. That's filmmaking in general, right? It's like, if we can all agree that we're in this together, it's going to be a better product. But I just think about on any set, how much, people are on walkie-talkies, how much people are yelling sharps or, whatever's coming through. And it's
points.
Yeah. To not have any of that, it's, I'm sure it was very difficult, but as long as you have the patience and everybody has the patience and wants to do this, that's what matters.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
And it wasn't as difficult as you think
Yeah.
it would be. And truthfully, it wasn't that much. It wasn't that much harder.
Mhm.
And it helps that you have brilliant. There's such, diversity is one of these interesting things. Even if you don't agree with it on a moral sense, you don't think it should matter, or you just don't care about it, then at a basic sort of business level or a management level, you should be casting your net as wide as possible. You don't want to be going from the shallow end of the talent pool
Right.
the whole time. You want to go to the deep end, and to do that, if you can make just tiny accommodations in places, you're going to get incredibly experienced people on there. I mean, our production designer has worked on, he's deaf, and he's worked on Marvel films and stuff like that. These aren't like hobbyists working on these films. They're all
Right.
professionals. They're all doing amazing work and stuff.
Wow.
So you're silly if you're excluding them as potential talent for you.
And that's actually a really great point, because I think that's something we know, like networking and trying to find, more people to always bring on, or like you said, casting that wide net out there. I guess you would say that the work you're creating will always kind of then attract those talented people, is what I'm hearing, right? And like being able to find that alignment that you both like agree on, I guess, is that's the key, and another great way to do it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, that's really a great point. But like I love that it's not that hard. I love that you're just making that the point. It's just not that hard, and something we can all achieve if we're wanting to do it and willing to do it. Yeah.
Making a film is an act of complete lunacy. So it's already hard.
I feel stupid every time I'm like telling people what I'm doing.
Because you do it, but also because people
just
think
making a film. That's fine.
People think it's simpler than it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, does it need all that?" And then, so it's really hard. It's really complicated. If you go and you're then like, when people say they're like, "Oh, but how will you account for that?" I'm like, "You've already done the hard part. By getting this up and rolling. This is a tiny extra adjustment you've got to make. It's minuscule compared to what you've already done. It's only because it's easy to say, it's really easy to say we can't. Can't is such an easy word to put out.
So
there.
easy.
Yeah.
I'm always, I actually hate that word. I hate that word. Let me just try to, what's the problem? Solution. Come to me with solutions. Don't come to me with problems or we can't, because I'm always going to there's a point where you just have to say, okay, this isn't going to work. But I feel like you always have to explore. I always look at everything and then make the decision, Yeah.
No, the only time I think can't is acceptable is if it's, well, we can't do that, but we can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Then, as long as it's followed by that. But of course, you're shooting your Western, and if you have a director, I'm not sure if you were directing or who directed, if the director goes and says, and I must have a cast of at least 25 people in the background, you're like, yeah, that's just not going to happen. That's simply, we can't do. But what we can do is, we can shoot it so that you've got 2 extras in each shot in the background, so it amplifies the number of people, and we can actually ask the DP if they can move the camera really fast, so it'll add a lot of more energy to the scene. That's perfectly fine. I don't, then it's fine to do that. And then that's when it goes back to your point, Carolina, where you're just like, well, if the director isn't prepared, and I say, you guys, I'm presuming, have both produced and directed and written and things. And so same thing, you switch hats and you do it. And if you're, when you've been a producer and you've been a director, you kind of know the producer's going to say no to you for a good reason. And you as a director, you know that you've got to kind of ask for stuff, but accept that, it'll get down to where they can get it.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of creative collaboration, y'all. Yeah. That's it right there.
And especially if you've worn all those hats, you get it. You understand what the limitations are of the other side. So when you're not wearing both hats, you're like, okay, I know that I can't come to the, producer with this issue or whatever. And you get it. You get what you have to provide.
I just think it's disrespectful when you want to ask, what your limitations are, and then you want to ask for something that I'm not. Producers aren't gods. We can pretend that we can make it all happen, but at the end of the day, to your point, if there's a limit restriction at a location for a crew of 20 people and then you want to invite 10 extras on. Like, no, honey, we can't do that.
Right.
Like, I can't, there's a restriction in place, you know, and I'm someone where like, all right, maybe throw like a crew member on as an extra to again create like more bodies and stuff without having to bring in more people into this limited set that we agreed to with the location. And like, you know, it's just like that really bothers me. Like, because I just think it's when, you know, people don't feel like you can't ask, but just think about it. Like you already know what agreements are in place maybe, or whatever, like what's a solution we can come with where you can still get what you're looking for without like, you know, jeopardizing the set or, you know, agreements, etc. So that's just like where I draw my line.
Yeah, no, I think there's a dangerous myth of the auteur in film. There's this idea that sort of you have someone that goes and they're a genius and they've because you always get the odd Oscar-winning film where everyone knew the director was really difficult and they demanded and the budget inflated and then 2 people got injured because of it and But you know, at the end of it, the work was so beautiful. They're like, well, yeah, every now and again that did, but arguably, but you're always like, would that film still have been an Oscar-worthy film if they hadn't gone nuts and done that stuff and actually just been creative with what they had? Quite possibly. And then you look at all the other films where people did that and nobody even watched them because they just still came out a bit rubbish. A film isn't brilliant because someone has been insistent on things. A film is brilliant because someone takes what is available and uses it creatively in a smart way to entertain an audience. Yeah. Just my opinion. Then again, what the F do I know?
But oh my gosh, Mikail. So we know you're working on a couple of other projects, but is there anything else you'd like our audience to know or leave with? And we're definitely going to ask you to pimp out your socials.
Yes, social media, website, all of that. Like
everything, all of that.
We want people to see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, the main thing, Aimee Victoria is still on this festival circuit. It's going to finish its run in about 3 months. I think we've been very lucky. It's been in 2 Oscar qualifying festivals, been screened at 2 BAFTA qualifying festivals.
Wow.
It's had a screening at the BFI British Film Institute in London.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So yeah, we're very lucky for a film that we did on an iPhone remotely. It's done very well. And I'm developing that into a feature film at the moment, which actually working with the original writer and another brilliant writer on that. And then I'm attached to direct a film which is being written by Markle James from Game of Thrones. He's a lovely, lovely guy, and it's being done. He's part Jamaican, being done with a Jamaican producer called Tracy Roan. And yeah, I've got a few sort of bits on the go, but as you know, as with everything, you should throw it out there and see what happens.
Yes.
No, I don't think anything else really to say about myself or that. I really, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very
hope you
flattered
enjoyed this.
Oh, really? It was tremendous. No, I'm really flattered to have been invited. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also for our listeners, and if you have like a social media handle or just what your website address is, just for them to find you.
To stalk you.
Yeah, to stalk me, absolutely. My my Instagram, I'm not tremendously active, but my Instagram is at midnightcaller ___. Midnight Caller it's an old music handle I had many years ago.
Okay.
When I first went on Instagram. Truth be told, I went on Instagram, I didn't really want anyone to find me. And then I did it, and now I don't really know how to change it. So I just stuck with it. I'm on Twitter at Mikail Chowdhury as well. So, and you can look up my production company on, it's called LDNO Productions, which stands for Locked Down Not Out Productions. And that is ldno.com.
Love it.
Love it. Welcome to the community. And thank you again for coming on today.
Yeah, this was
thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Femme Regard Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in every Friday for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals.
We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can also join the Femme Fam on Patreon. For more on us, check us out at femregard.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.